This episode of The Unstarving Musician was powered by liner notes. Learn from the hundreds of musicians and industry pros I've spoken with for The Unstarving Musician on topics such as marketing, songwriting, touring, sync licensing, and much more. Sign up for liner notes. Liner Notes is an email newsletter from yours truly in which I share some of the best knowledge gems garnered from the many conversations featured on The Unstarving Musician. You'll also be privy to the latest podcast episodes and Liner Notes subscriber exclusives. Sign up at unstarvingmusician.com/liner notes. It's free and you can unsubscribe at any time. This is The Unstarving Musician. I'm Rabanzo. This is my podcast. It features conversations with independent music artists and industry professionals with occasional special topic episodes featuring yours truly. A glimpse into the minds of my varied guests, all intended to help independent music artists better understand the marketing, business, and creative processes that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. Welcome to another episode. How are you? Where are you? Where are you at? Are you driving? Are you getting ready for work? Are you still trying to get your lazy arse out of bed? And most importantly, what are you wearing? Hey, I'm really happy to have you here with me as always as we wind down the Unstarving Musician series. Only 3 episodes to go, including today, right? Today's 298, 299, 300. Boom! Yep, that'll be it, kids, in case you didn't hear it. The big announcement last week, episode 300. But I have ideas for lots more happening after 300 with all the good stuff I learned, all the good content, all the good voices that were on the podcast. And I'll share more of that very soon for those of you who are subscribers to the Liner Notes newsletter, which you can obviously sign up for at unstarvingmusician.com. All right, let's dive right into today's topic, which is creating your own gigs. So I've written a lot about finding and booking better gigs in my little book and on the blog for the Unstarving Musician. But my perspective has expanded quite a bit since I started the podcast. If you'd like to read how I started out in finding and booking gigs, check out The Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs, my humble little book, which the price of which has been lowered to only $4.99. You can get it on Amazon or just go to unstarvingmusician.com/book, link in the show notes, kids, and pick up your copy. So, yes, I would like to discuss a strategy that kind of came on my radar first came on my radar from a fellow musician, a Canadian named Arlene Paculan in episode 112, which I encourage you to check out. And she shared with me her tactics for doing this, and I'm going to tell you how it has applied to my situation. Yeah, she shared the ideas of creating her own gigs. That's Arlene. And it was something she was doing when we spoke in 2019. She founded an organization and organized, an event for her local business community with a creativity and music focus. And she created the event as part of an effort to build a local following first, local in her community based on advice from her own mother. Start local, she said to Arlene. So Arlene soon found, after doing this, she found herself performing regularly and winning music awards. So she created this event. She performed there. She got one gig, got another, and then suddenly she's winning awards. She worked hard for that, but you can see how it starts, right? Or hear how it starts. I've had some firsthand experience with creating gigs. I guess now in the last couple of years, one opportunity came through a relationship that began with the podcast. And as you know, relationships are everything in life and music. So last year I received a message from Johnny Bergen. He is a Chicago blues-style guitarist, singer, songwriter. And he messaged me to say, hey, I'm performing at this thing called the Querétaro Blues Festival in where you live, in Querétaro. So the ensuing conversations with Johnny led to discussions of booking house concerts around the Blues Festival and eventually to my landing the drum chair for his headlining performance at the Blues Festival. So by getting involved, kind of like a volunteer, in organizing some of his trip here, organizing some gigs around the festival, that turned into gigs for me. Yeah, there was some luck involved, right? Because I know Johnny or met Johnny and he called me. But hey, I made those things happen. So one little example of how you can do it. A significant part of my relationship with Johnny stems from my interest in doing house concerts or a house concert rather, and a private blues cruise event with him back in 2020 when I was in Panama. House concerts are really one of the purest forms of creating gigs in my mind. And creating gigs through house concerts starts with building a following of fans and supporters of your own. So Johnny and I performed at 2 private house concerts and 1 public venue, in addition to during his recent visit to Querétaro, and in addition to his performance at the Querétaro Blues Festival. And back in 2020, when the whole interest started, we did indeed do a house concert, did a blues cruise, and a public venue gig. It was a lot of fun, and it was a great learning experience. Set me up for this thing we did late last year. Another opportunity presented itself prior to the show with Johnny, in which a neighbor of mine opened a nearby coffee shop. And once when I was there, knowing she was still building her business, I asked if she was interested in hosting an event around my then new acoustic ensemble. And she said yes. So we worked out the details together. Collaborating on the details of that event is an important point, or was an important thing for me and for you to note. So the host, the owner of the coffee shop, needed to be involved in the planning and marketing of the event anyway. But I also wanted her to be involved in shaping the event, since this was the first time she'd hosted live music at her little cafe. And it was also to ensure that she was invested in the mutual success of the event. And so I made 3 suggestions to her that are worth sharing, and that was the event should be private, reservations should be required to attend, and there was a cover charge. I mean, she's a little coffee shop, and if you know much about restaurants, cafes, and things, the margins are slim. The money to pay music artists, unfortunately, doesn't come out of thin air, so we worked that out. The event was a way to get my new acoustic ensemble a gig at which we got our feet kind of wet. This is the first time we'd played together. And it was also a way for me to break further into the music scene that's still new to me. And back then it was even newer, and this was just a few months ago. Things are kind of starting to change. I'm meeting more and more people because of things like this that I'm talking to you about. On another front, I'm in talks with a different local artist to host my own house concert, to be a house concert host. This other artist would be the main attraction, but taking a lead from him, I was thinking of doing a small opening set of just 2 or 3 songs with probably my acoustic ensemble. But it's a win-win, because I'll expose my local community to the idea of hosting their own house concerts with my friend, the other music artist, and possibly with my own band. So that's pretty cool, and that's something you can do too. One more example I can share is something I'm discussing with yet another local musician who also owns a recording studio and rehearsal studio in town, or I should say a recording and rehearsal studio here in Querétaro. So we're organizing a guitar masterclass with Johnny Bergen, who is returning to Mexico. And the studio owner suggested that we also host a jam, like an invitation-only jam, which has me thinking about creating a blues jam, like an open mic blues jam, a regular thing with other musicians. Just like in a blues jam, or like the one my friend suggested at his rehearsal studio, there would be a core band which would likely feature me on drums, but then, people would get to come and jam, drummers, guitar players, singers, whatever. These kind of things can feature, like in my case, can feature me among the other core musicians, can support us in the form of paying us when they're done properly. And this is a model I participated in between like 2012 and 2016 in San Jose. I was exposed to it long before 2012, but from 2012 to 2016, there was a thing going on in San Jose, California that I was involved in, where I was a part of a core band, and it was like an open mic thing for jammers to come up, and I got paid for those gigs and paid pretty decent. And let's see, there are a few things that would need to be worked out for this jam, but that the studio owner suggested. Part of that is finding a group of core musicians who would be the host band, and for me to sort of keep my eye out for people who would be a house band for a regular open blues jam that I could in theory host at some venue yet to be determined. Maybe that studio, I don't know, or maybe a public venue. Another angle to take with this is Of course, finding opportunity where live music exists, where it already exists. One thing you can and should do is collaborate with other bands. So I personally never toured, but one bit of advice I've read several times is that we should do gig swaps. And that involves two bands or artists booking a show in their hometowns or home turf and sharing the bill at those shows. So you're kind of swapping that opportunity with each other. You're going there like a double bill to each other's hometowns. On the surface, it sounds like a great way to seek out new markets, and it also seems like an effective way to introduce new material to new markets. So I love that idea, and hopefully it's something I'll get to do sometime soon. I'm not like a big touring guy. I know some of you are, at least some of you are who listen to this, but I'm all for, making a bit of a long drive for a couple of shows. I don't mind going out of town for a couple nights, but so I think it could work in that scenario too. And then obviously we have to network regularly and keep all the relationships going. We know how important that is and how important it is to see other bands, meet other musicians, smooth with professionals in the music community at large. So here are a few things to remember about that. Stating the obvious, but I think they're great reminders. Don't make business the first topic of your conversation. Find out how things are going for the people you're meeting and ask them to tell you what's new in their world. Doesn't have to be music. And then another thing on the networking front is to consider award ceremonies in your event rotation. These events usually are ticketed events, and I've heard from musicians that have been on the podcast that they're great networking events. You can share contacts and insights with people that you meet at these types of events or any networking interaction, transaction. It's kind of a transaction, as Johnny Bergen tells me. It's a transaction. But, you can share some insights and most importantly, keep the relationships going by staying in touch. All right, another tactic you can use is renting a venue where you can pull a crowd. Performance spaces are often affordable, not always, but often. So I've read. I could think of some that could be. Think of it as investing in yourself. So breaking even or losing a bit can be worth it sometimes in terms of growing your audience. It depends. I don't normally like to do that, but in this case, when you're trying to break into a new area, for instance, or just meet an entirely new audience, it can be good. It can be worth it to do. Not like all the time, but like to do it once in a while. It'll also show promoters that you're serious and committed to your endeavors, so that's a good thing. Remember to have a convenient way for people to follow you, subscribe to your email list, buy your merch, and stay connected. Make it easy. Give them lots of different ways. Another good tactic, also picked up from a guest of the podcast, as I take a sip of coffee here. Caffeine, friend, caffeine good, blessed caffeine. Yeah, another tip is to get involved and volunteer. So I picked that up from a music artist recently who was on the podcast who has been working hard for several years. She's starting to see the benefits, but she strongly recommends volunteering for things like radio-sponsored events, festivals, and anything else that touches music and entertainment because you meet cool people and, networking, right? Other musicians. And then you can consider booking resources, online resources. So I'm going to name a couple here, but these things always change. But at the time of this recording, Sonic Bids, Gigstarter, and Reverb Nation are places where you can register and sort of get some help with booking outside your areas or in your areas, from what I understand. I've never used them, but I've heard some good things about them. It just depends on how you work these things, right? And then always make your promo material great. Invest time or money in quality recordings, videos, photos, and a well-written bio. Start within your budget, but always be considering ways to level it up, make it look better. As a podcaster, I can tell you I've received a ton of guest submissions on a monthly basis, and I see a lot of press kits. And one thing I consistently see artists and bands skimp on is photos. So take a little time to get some decent photos. I mean, our phones are amazing now, so just take a little time. You can find YouTube videos on how to take better photos, so do that. With regard to finding more gigs where opportunities already exist, you need to be on top of the whole sending and responding to emails. So write thoughtful and personable emails to anyone who's booking somewhere. Templates are great, but they can also bite you in the behind. So take time to proofread and then proofread them again, then wait 10 minutes before sending them and proofread it again. Trust me on this, sloppy and impersonal, especially if they're impersonal. You can have some spelling errors, but if they're impersonal because you used a template, big turnoff. So keep them short and to the point. Grammarly is a great tool that can help you write concise and grammatically correct emails. And if you need help with a draft, just go to any number of the new AI thingies and get it to draft something for you and start from there, put your own touch to it. And make it easy for bookers to access your music and promotional assets. Give them links in your emails, verify that those links work, and include a good performance video if you have one, but you really, these days, you got to have one. And do your best to respond the same day. These people are typically wearing multiple hats, so make their lives easier by responding promptly. And if you can't take a gig, just explain why and offer a referral to another artist or band. Venues will remember you for this, I promise, and let them know. So will the people that you referred, but let them know when you are available, and you may get an alternate date. And then how about lastly, we talk about festivals. They're seasonal, so you need to make your time to research festivals in advance. You want to target the ones that book bands in your genre. So find other bands that have performed at your target festivals, the ones that are kind of doing what you're doing, something similar, aligned. And do these bands have a good social media presence? Do they have any press mentions? Are they with a label? So how does your band compare? That's why you want to ask those questions. It'll help you determine if your band is ready to apply for the same festival, because they're not all created equal, right? Familiarize yourself with the application requirements of any festivals. Great-looking promo material is even more valuable when pursuing these types of gigs, as is a well-organized EPK, electronic press kit. So give the promoters everything they need on one page. And if you don't have a website, get one. Many festivals do require an application, which means they have a process, which also means the follow-up emails can get annoying. In fact, follow-up emails can get you blacklisted sometimes. So one exception is if something really big happened after you submitted your application, like you landed another major festival or an opening spot with a really well-known artist. So in this case, a follow-up email could make a little sense, and it also obviously makes sense to update your press kit to reflect these happenings. All right. Wow, that was a lot of stuff. I hope it inspires you to create a gig or two of your own and helps you find some existing ones. I know, from my experience, these things can lead to really good opportunities. And if you have experience creating your own gigs, or you started doing some of these other tactics to find gigs where opportunities exist, please email me. I would love to hear your story. I said please email me, but just go to unstarvingmusician.com, and I'll put a link in the show notes directly to the contact page, but I have all my socials and contact information accessible from every page. You can find me on the socials as well as at Robonzo Drummer or Unstarving Musician. And I would love to hear from you. Thanks again for listening, and I will catch you soon. If you do not yet have a website for your music, check out Bandzoogle. It was created to help musicians and bands build their website and manage direct-to-fan marketing and sales. Bandzoogle has amazing design options, a commission-free store to sell music, merch, tickets, and more, plus tools that can capture detailed fan data for you. Try it free at bandzoogle.com. Use the promo code ROBONZO, ROBONZO, to get 15% off your first year. Thank you for listening. You can leave us feedback, questions, comments, complaints at unstarvingmusician.com/feedback. If you enjoyed this podcast, please follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. If you love this podcast, please visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor to learn about the many ways of showing your love and support. Your support does indeed equal love. The series music you heard in this episode is New Gods Part 2 by yours truly. Find links for all the places to hear the full version with vocals by yours truly at robonzo.com. Find links for all the people and things talked about in this episode at unstarvingmusician.com. Peace, love, and a whole lot of gratitude.